The views are out of this world.
This thing is unbelievable. It sounds incredible.
Golly gee, everybody, look at that.
Like a small boat on the ocean, sending big waves into motion. Like how a single word can make a heart open. I might only have one match, but I can make an explosion. And all those things I didn't say were wrecking balls inside my brain.
Welcome to another episode of Drive. This season is all about adventure and, of course, visiting great locations in great cars. I really needed a break this week, and where better to do it? To quote the castle, how's the serenity? Clear skies, deadly silent, and still plenty of ways to keep me entertained. But where am I, and how did I get here? Well, let's take it back to the very start so you can get here yourself. Our drive this week starts in Windeyer, New South Wales, which is around 4 hours northwest of Sydney and only 40 minutes from the bustling town of Mudgee. Being home to less than 200 people, it sets the tone for the trip we're about to embark on. From here, we'll be heading further northwest in search of something only a few places in the world can claim the title to: zero light pollution. To accompany me, I've got the MG ZS EV. It's one of the more affordable EVs available on the market in Australia right now, but this one is the long range. Why this car for this journey? Well, that longer range means you get quite a significant boost compared to the standard model, an extra 120 kilometres to be exact. So a claimed 440 Ks should be more than enough for this adventure. Plus, it has vehicle-to-load capabilities, which is handy for any road trip, but more so when you're in a remote area just like this one. The 2023 MG ZS EV Long Range SUV is priced from around $60,000 drive away, depending on which state you live in. Along with vehicle to load, some of its standard niceties include panoramic sunroof, heated front seats, power folding side mirrors, wireless phone charging, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto and satellite navigation. I've driven my fair share of electric cars. More importantly, I've driven through my fair share of regional areas. And I'm going to tell you something, there aren't enough of these to go around. So I'm going to teach you a thing or two about charging etiquette. The best thing to do is to note down how long your car says it's going to take to charge and return as close as you can to that time, because I'm telling you now, these are getting more and more popular and there are always cars waiting for that charging station. Something else you can do is become involved in the apps. Things like PlugShare, you can check in, leave a comment, let people know how long your car is going to take to charge, and if you're going to be late for some reason, also let them know. It's just one thing that we can do to help each other out until this progresses and to navigate our way through this new world of electric cars. We just hit the road from Windeyer and all up this drive is around 3 hours, give or take. But because this season is all about adventure, we've got a little something extra in mind, and that means going off the tarmac for a much needed detour, just so we're not cruising just on the highway. Where we're heading is peaceful with quieter roads and we're chasing clear skies. So with that in mind, we may as well have a zero noise, zero pollution car to match. I've already mentioned that this is the long range, so you get a claimed 440 kilometres of driving range. The trade-off is that you have a little less power, about 15 kilowatts to be exact. So this is capable of 115 kilowatts and 280 newton metres, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's enough to get the job done. We've already thrown plenty at this car, heading along a lot of different surfaces. A lot of them are rough and bumpy, and it's just going to get bumpier as the trip goes on. But surprisingly, the ride quality so far, it's handled things really well. What I want to make mention of is that on a trip like this one, you might not always meet that claimed driving range. So we're not just driving along flat surfaces doing around 80 kilometres an hour. It really depends on the conditions. And for this trip, well, a lot of different surfaces and very hilly terrain. So it means that we've lost around 60 or so kilometres of driving range. Now you might be thinking, why on earth would you take an EV out to a remote area? Well, this is what people want to do with their electric cars. You're not just going to be driving it in and around town, you will be going further distances. So all I can say is make sure you're planned and you shouldn't run into any hiccups.
Do 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 do. Oh yeah. Gotta change my answering machine now that I'm alone. Cause right now it says that we can't come to the phone. And I know it makes no sense, cause you walked out the door. But it's the only way I hear your voice anymore.
If you do decide to take our detour along the gazetted road, then expect it to be very bumpy, but also maybe find a car wash on the other side. Your car's going to get pretty dirty. I promise you it's well worth it though, even though it is a bumpy ride. The views are sensational. It's really open and there's vast countryside on either side. Animals everywhere as well. We've seen donkeys, goats, you name it, we've seen it, emus as well. If you do choose to go down this road, just keep in mind that there are private properties on either side. So be respectful, watch out for livestock, don't go fast. Just never forget that you're in someone else's backyard.
So why can't I turn off the radio?
I'm in the small but quaint town of Coolah. Now, it might not be bursting with activities, but it is rich in history, and it's been really nice to immerse myself in the community, even if it was just for one night. The name Coolah is derived from the English pidgin word meaning angry. Not really sure what the locals would have to be angry about, except for with just how cool it is. And by cool, I mean it got down to -4 overnight. This place is steeped in history with one particular Aussie phrase. Coolah is one of 3 towns claiming to be the birthplace of the Black Stump, meaning beyond the limits of civilization. And from our research, it has the strongest claim. Coolah's claim is supported by a reference in an old document showing land boundaries, which were declared by Governor Darling in 1826. The boundary line journeys through the centre of a property known as Black Stump Run. These days though, Coolah is home to about 800 residents, but with a small town, there's always a big heart. Make sure you stop by Coolah Crafts and other local businesses, including the charming Black Stump Motel, now known as the Calais Motel Coolah. Must be Holden fans. A very big thank you to Aaron and Rebecca for their sensational hospitality. The only place I've ever stayed that thought to cover our car windscreens so that we didn't wake up to a horrific surprise the next morning. Yep, it was cold.
Step out the front door like a ghost into the fog where no one notices the contrast of white on white. And in between the moon and you, angels get a better view of the crumbling difference between wrong and right.
So you can tell that we're heading beyond the black stump. The landscape's changing, the roads are getting a lot quieter, and it is quite dry out here at the moment, but I can tell you the scenery, the hillside, the landscape, it all is really beautiful. There's something really calming about being off the grid, no reception, and just taking in the beauty of this region.
Round here, we always...
With the location that we're in and an adventure like this one, you might be thinking that I'll be pitching a tent tonight, but it's -4 degrees expected overnight. So I think we might save that for another episode, but where we're going is off the grid, literally, and you'll find out a little bit more about that later. But it really is a perfect place to stay on a trip like this one. In our pursuit to find a clear night sky, we're off to a place called Coonabarabran, and this place is known as the stargazing capital of Australia. The area is a certified dark sky park. It's the first of 3 in Australia and the first in the Southern Hemisphere. Now, all we need is for the weather to be kind to us so we can have that clear night sky. Coonabarabran is an incredible place filled with stunning nature, scientific discoveries and cheerful townsfolk. Somewhere else you have to stop in and see is Sliding Spring Observatory, Australia's premier optical astronomical research facility. Located under 30 kilometres west of Coonabarabran, right on the edge of the Warrumbungle National Park, it's home to Australia's largest optical telescopes, and we lucked in with a private tour. Brennock, this is an impressive place. It's almost its 50th year anniversary. Tell us about some of the discoveries that have been made here.
So there's been quite a number of discoveries made on this mountain with this telescope specifically and across the site over the last 50, 60 years. One of the main ones is pulsars and also galactic archaeology, looking into how galaxies form, they've merged, and sort of trying to age the general universe. It's been at the forefront of it.
So I'm sure everyone can see this right behind us. It's pretty extraordinary. I'm told it's one of the best in the world.
It definitely is. So this one here, it's still actually the 4th best performing telescope in the world, and that's based on the amount of data and research that it's done. But for 50 years old, that's pretty impressive.
Running in circles, coming in tails, heads on a science apart.
It's been right at the forefront of everything, and that's what's kept it at sort of a really high international level. We tend to be pretty ingenious with the way that we design things. We keep making new things for this one and then sending them off to everyone else.
Now we're in Dark Sky Park.
That's super important to us here. So one of the things about light is it's really detrimental to what you can do with your research telescopes and sort of what things you can see, how far out you can see, and also affects nocturnal animals, affects people really badly as well. And they found that banning the types of lights where it goes up into the atmosphere, spreads out and blankets the night sky is the best thing to do. So here we have capping over the top of our lights, and that protects all those beautiful stars, the Milky Way, everything else, and that allows us to sort of have the darkest skies we possibly can.
I can tell when you're talking, you're very passionate about it. What made you want to get into this?
I loved this science specifically and science in general for my entire life. I put it down to a question from my father when I was younger. I used to ask him a lot of questions actually, and he always had answers. And it came down to, I asked him if there was anything that he couldn't answer or anything he didn't understand, and that was the universe. One question was, if you get to the edge of the universe, what's out there? And from that unanswerable question, I've always found a real passion with specifically this science because it is the edge of our understanding and it's pushing us forward into the future.
While I'm sure you'll get an epic night sky from the observatory, we've got something else planned. As mentioned earlier, we're parking up for the night and really taking that whole theory of going off the grid rather seriously. This is Dark Sky Eco Resort. Owners Mark and Wendy were so inspired by the magnificent region that they put careful thought into every detail so that they could create a truly unique experience that complements the native landscape. The resort is fully off-grid and they are proud to be sustainable in all their practices. There's so much to experience on this 80-acre property. Head out on a little safari and meet the emus, stay in and unwind, explore the property on your own electric carts, and of course, take in the clear night sky.
Nothing at all.
Wendy, you and your husband Mark have done a fantastic job with this place. It really is something special. What motivated you to start it up?
Well, we decided to retire early-ish. We were living in Castlereagh Street in the city in Sydney in a 2-bedroom apartment and wanted to retire. So we wanted somewhere off-grid, totally out of the way, private, away from everybody, not in a big town or a city. So, yeah, that was the motivation.
That's quite a change from the city of Sydney.
Yeah.
Can you just take us through the entire off-the-grid system and how it works?
So we've got an 8 kilowatt system with 48 solar panels. So that services both houses and incubators and hatcheries, and everything's electric here. We've got air conditioners, fridges, spas, all electric, and golf carts as well. So it's all, you know, with the off-grid, that we don't need to worry about power or anything or having blackouts. So, yeah, and then it's the water as well, and we have a bore that goes down 90 feet, and that's off the aquifer, filtered through the aquifer, sandstone aquifer, so we get beautiful pure water to drink, and so we've got the best of both worlds.
That's fascinating. I know that you're booked out all throughout the week, and we were lucky just to get in tonight. Tell us about some of the tours that you run as well for the guests.
So we're a minimum 2-night stay, and we go around in the golf carts and go through all the paddocks, and we have a few different Aboriginal stories to tell, and we take the guests in with the emus and walk with them and cuddle them. And we've got some archaeological features to show them about the volcano. So we do a Jurassic Park style safari through the emu paddocks. We stop and talk to them and pat them and cuddle them, and just go through all the paddocks and collect eggs when it's egg laying time. And the guests seem to love that quite a lot, so yeah.
And I'm sure they all enjoy the stargazing too. This is probably one of the clearest skies I've seen in a very long time coming from Melbourne.
So that's the second part of our offering that we have. We bring the guests up here, and we've got our own telescope, 2 telescopes. We look at the night sky, we show them a video of the solar system and do a little montage of their visit while they were here, and give it to them on a disc at the end, and they love it.
Well, we are just so excited to be here. Thank you for having us. I think I'm going to sleep really well tonight. And yeah, thank you.
My pleasure.
As you might remember, this is where we were at the very beginning of this episode. I'm setting up my MG so that I can boil the kettle for a warm cuppa. Possible thanks to its vehicle-to-load capabilities, and something that comes in very handy when you're driving through remote areas. But how about that starry night sky? If you are heading on a drive like this one, then I encourage you to stretch it out for as long as possible. While we're in remote areas, there's still plenty to see and do, and there are different routes to take. We're pretty happy with the one that we chose. Immerse yourself in the communities and make sure you spend some time talking to the locals as well, because they've given us a lot of ideas of where to go on a lot of these trips and places that you might not find when you do your research. I've spoken to a lot of the locals on this trip. I feel like I made a few friends as well, and a lot of them have been really interested in the MG and have asked a lot of questions about EVs. So let's hope that the infrastructure improves out in these areas and we'll be seeing more and more EVs driving around. The people in these towns have been really helpful, lovely and friendly. I'm going to go as far as saying that Central New South Wales, the land of the friendly. This is the Pilliga State Forest, and as well as being known as the largest native forest west of the Great Dividing Range, stretching over 500,000 hectares, it's also known as having the most Bigfoot sightings in the whole of Australia. So if you believe this Australian urban legend, like I do, then come on down and explore for yourself. I think I'm going to try my luck, because these kind of things get my motor running. We'll see you next week for another great drive.
Wait a minute, can't you see that I wanna fall from the stars straight into your arms?
We started from Sydney and took the drive northwest to Windeyer, where the real trip began. We then took a detour along Hill End Road, in between Windia and Mudgee before landing in Coolah. From Coolah, we trekked up to Coonabarabran, visiting the Observatory before parking up at the resort. Our final stop was a trip back down to Pilliga State Forest. It was a longer journey this time round, but filled with stunning sights and starry skies. Next week on the show, Trent and Sam take Toyota's legendary Land Cruiser on a trek across one of the world's largest deserts of longitudinal dunes. It's the mighty Simpson Desert. That's next week on Drive.